That is the time on the alarm. That means you got to repeat that alarm. Welcome back to part 2 of Tuesday thing of ex-Sheriff Jamey Noel in Clark County, Indiana. You people who watch these videos, if you haven't subscribed, I'm asking you all to subscribe. So we got about another 60 minutes to go.
Oh, there you go. Ms. Clark, for the record, it's my understanding that your motion to quash is now limited based upon some agreement between the parties.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. And I guess you'll wait till your client's call.
I will sit him down.
Quiet. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Jeff Herron.
Officer Herron, you were sworn earlier, correct? Yes, sir.
Sir, would you state your full name for the record?
Jeffrey C. Herron.
And spell your last name for the record?
Turn the audio up.
What is your current rank or title with the state police?
I'm a lieutenant in charge of investigation for what we call Area 5. Three different districts in the central part of the state. I don't know if anything now.
Are you in charge of, investigations?
I am in charge of investigations. I supervise both the detectives and Teresa May.
Who is the lead investigator in the Jamey Noel investigation? When did you become involved in the Jamey Noel investigation?
I got engaged on June 13th, 2023, and I started the investigation in July 13th, 2023.
And since July of 2023, have you been the applicant on all search warrants?
I have
How many are we up to now?
51.
Have you been a part of every interview of every witness thus far?
I have been, yes.
And have you been a part of the arrest of all 3 individuals in Jamey Noel, Casey Noel, and Bissy Noel?
Yes, sir, I have.
I want to have a brief discussion. The August search warrant of Tay Bridge, were you a part of that?
I was the author of that search warrant, and I directed that, but I never actually went to the Tay Bridge location on August 16th.
Who is the owner and occupant of the Tay Bridge home back in August of 2023?
Jamey Noel.
And was that verified at the time of the warrant?
It was, yes.
At some point in time, was there an arrest warrant for the defendant, Jamey Noel?
Yes, there was.
And was he ultimately arrested and had an initial hearing here in this courtroom?
He was, yes.
Do you remember when the initial hearing was?
November 9th, 2023.
And at the time of the initial hearing, what was the defendant's place of residence at that time?
3001 Old Tay Bridge, Jeffersonville, Indiana.
The same time, or the same place that it was in August of 2023?
That's correct.
Is that the address that he provided to the court at his initial hearing pursuant to the IRAS Indiana Risk Assessment?
Yes, it is.
Were you present for that initial hearing?
I was, yes, sir.
Were you present when the judge gave Mr. Noel his conditions with respect to firearms?
I was, yes, sir.
Were you in the courtroom specifically then?
I was, yes.
Were you a part of the collection of any firearms?
I was on the receiving end of those firearms at the post after they were collected.
Let's back up just 1 second. The day of the initial hearing, November of 2023, were you asked either by the court or the parties on that day approximately how many guns there were?
I was, yes, by the judge.
How many were there?
There ended up being, I believe, 82 approximately.
And what was your understanding of the court's order at that initial hearing?
That Mr. Noel surrendered all firearms except for one shotgun for home defense.
And you state that some of those weapons were brought to the Indiana State Police Post. What district?
District 45, the Sellersburg Post.
Is that something you logged or inventoried personally?
No, I was there when they were delivered, but I did not log or inventory them.
When you were present, who delivered their guns?
So Charlie Moon, Bradley Kramer, and also present to observe was a Matt Owens for a period of time.
Was Jamey Noel the defendant present at that time?
He was not.
Do you know where he was at that time?
I believe he was still incarcerated or in the process of being released.
So the turning over the weapons was something prior to him being released?
That was my understanding at the time. Since my discussions with Bradley Kramer, I understand maybe he was released slightly early when that was still in the process of going on.
And you were there basically as an observer with respect to those guns?
Correct.
Did somebody from the Indiana State Police log and inventory those?
Yes.
Do you know who that was, or do you recall?
So it was Sergeant Andy Taylor, Sergeant Merritt Toomey, and Sergeant Phil D'Angelo with the Indiana State Police. They were the ones that logged those and provided and filled out the property record receipts.
And you said that was November 9th, 2023?
Yes, sir.
Do you know when the defendant moved back to when he was released from incarceration?
It's my understanding it was 3001 Old Tay Bridge.
Now, I want to direct your attention to the Tom James search warrant, for lack of a better term. Are you familiar with that search warrant?
I am, yes, sir.
Who wrote that search warrant?
I did.
What number search warrant was that?
45.
And just briefly for the court, Tom James is what?
It's a high-end clother, tailored custom outfits, clothing for men and women.
It's about a $2,000 outfit, people.
So it was to collect the items that were purchased, the men's suits, the belts, the shoes. I had attached to the search warrant an exhibit, which was multiple pages of a history of purchases from Jamey Noel that I had provided the court. It was to receive those. He had ultimately purchased, I believe, total $183,000 using the Utica Fire Department money to purchase clothes from Tom James. And then I took the last 5 years for the statute of limitations and used those records in order to seize those items because they were purchased with, ultimately with Utica money, with Utica Volunteer Firefighters Association money, and I was seizing those because they were part of the case.
Were you looking for any sort of paperwork, receipts, etc., anything else for any of those that items or apparel?
Right, the documents and the receipts that went along with those items.
What day did you serve that search warrant?
March 13th, 2024.
Who was the officer in charge at that scene?
I was.
Who was all present? Roughly how many officers were present on March 13th?
I believe we had 7 plus the State Board of Accounts. We had 2 uniformed troopers, 4 detectives, and then a CSI, and then a State Board of Accounts.
Is this something you coordinated or somebody else?
I coordinated all of that.
Once you received the warrant, did you immediately go to the house, explain how the March 13th kind of went?
So I had, as I was looking through the different American Express purchases, I saw the $183,000, and so I had contacted Tom James, and I ended up speaking to an attorney for that business, and then he provided those documents to me. And then during that conversation, he said that Mr. Noel had purchased a suit of clothing, various clothing, on, I believe it was December 22nd, 2023, and that those items had not been delivered yet. And he told me later that those items would be delivered on March 13th, 2024. In the morning, he told me roughly between 9 and 9:30.
Let me back up 1 second. He was arrested on November 9th.
Correct.
You provided information from Tom James that he used the Utica credit card on December 22nd,
Yes,
and the suit was going to be delivered on March 13th.
correct.
Okay. So, on March 13th, you're at the home, or you're waiting for the defendant to be there?
So we were told, so I'd written the search warrant the night before, with the exception of the facts that were going to unfold that morning, so I didn't have to write the entire search warrant that morning. We were told that the suit was going to be delivered roughly 9:30 in the morning, and I knew who the salesman was, and that was Jordan Yoakum. And Mr. Yoakum, I had been in contact with him, and over the phone, and he'd indicated about 8:50 that morning that he would be there in about 10 minutes, about 9 o'clock. He described the vehicle he was driving, which is a white Lincoln Aviator, and so we had sat, myself and Detective Hansen had sat in our car down the street, and we watched for the white Lincoln Aviator. And as it had pulled up, then once it had left, I confirmed that the suit was delivered, and then I finished the authoring of the next paragraph of my search warrant, and I sent it to the judge. While that was going on, I'd also called Dave Mitchell that morning and Merritt Toomey and asked for detectives and uniform officers to stage a couple of miles away so they wouldn't be seen, in order to, when I executed the search warrants, they would meet me there at the scene once we decided to execute that, and the judge had signed the search warrant.
How long did you wait then before you went to the Tabor Ridge home?
So our initial plan was to wait, obviously, until the search warrant got issued. So once it got signed, we moved a little closer so we could see the front of the house to make sure Jamey Noel didn't leave with that particular suit in question. And so once we got a little closer, we saw him come out and open the door of a silver Mercedes-Benz, and when he did, we thought he was possibly getting ready to leave. It looked like he was getting into the car, and so I went ahead and pushed it up. My original thought was I was going to allow for a little bit of time to go by to not burn or to not put Mr. Yoakum in front of everybody, having said that he cooperated with state police because he was concerned about that.
Once you got to the home, was there anyone outside then?
So once we pulled up a little farther away at the intersection there to where we could actually see the house, we saw Mr. Noel come out. When he did, he got in the car. At that point, I called Detective Mitchell and Sergeant Toomey and said, come on, bring everybody down. We're going to go ahead and execute the search warrant. And so me and Detective Hansen pulled in to the driveway there. At that point, Mr. Noel was still out by the silver Mercedes-Benz, and we confronted him. I explained to him that I had a warrant that I wanted to read to him, and then I got relatively close to him, and then I read him the warrant verbatim. So he understood what we were searching for, and then I provided him a copy of the list of the items we were searching for.
Was there anyone else outside the home or from the house?
Not from the house, no.
And did you, once you read him the warrant, provided him a copy of the warrant, did you go in?
We waited. He said, I asked him if anybody else were in the house. He said that both of his daughters, Casey and Gracie, were inside of the residence. I said, would you please call them? He called them on the phone with me being present there. He asked them to get their belongings together and come on out. After about 8 to 10 minutes, they still hadn't emerged from the house. I said, I think it's best that we go in. And so Mr. Noel said, hey, I will show you where these items of clothing are, where I keep them. And so he actually led the way, and we went into the house. We entered into the kitchen. As we entered into the kitchen, he walked over to the basement door. He opens the basement door. He yelled for Casey to come out. I apparently didn't know where she was at. And then Casey and Gracie came down the stairs from upstairs. And then at that point, we asked them to get their belongings and leave, and they did. And then after they left, he walked us down and showed us the suit that he just received, which was now on the couch in the living room. And then he walked us into the master bedroom and walked us around there and showed us where his different closets were. And then he turned and walked out. And then we walked down into the basement, and he showed us where other items were in the basement, which is over by that table that we've been talking to this afternoon.
Okay, people, I got a question. Can that judge order him to turn them credit cards over? It belongs to the Utica Fire Department. Just think about it for a while. I think he should turn them credit cards over before he gets out of jail.
Did you detain the defendant there at the time then or not?
I told him he was free to go.
Did he leave?
He eventually left. He left at, We served the warrant at about 10:34, 10:35 in the morning, and he left at about 10:50. So he stuck around about 15 to 16 minutes.
Were Casey or Gracie detained at all?
They were not. They were told they were free to leave. They actually went outside for a minute, and then they asked, Detective Hansen went out, and they asked, Casey asked if she could get additional items of clothing, and he escorted her back in, and then she went back out and stayed until, I believe, Mr. Noel came out and got into his Mercedes-Benz.
Once you started the search, had they already left?
He actually got into a BMW. Once we started the search, yes. Well, merit to me, I had directed him to take photographs all around the house, which is standard procedure. And then once we got into the house, once it was secure and we figured there was nobody else in there, then he had started his photography throughout the house.
Who determined who was going to search in which room of the home?
We were all standing in the kitchen. We said, that was the uniform detectives, or uniform officers and the detectives, and I broke them up into teams. I sent Detective Mitchell and or First Sergeant Mitchell and James Donahoe and Chris Hansen down initially with him into the basement, and then the other detective, whose name escapes me, and then one of the uniformed troopers into Mr. Noel's bedroom to start doing a search. I provided both of them with copies of the list of the different items we were looking for and explained to them on those particular items. If I had been, having gone actually to, met me with the attorney, he had showed me that on the inside pocket, each one of these particular suits were monogrammed. It had Jamey Noel's name on it. It had a lot number and a series of other numbers, and a lot of those numbers correlated with those documents that we had. So we were able to seize what we believed to be those exact items on that list.
And you provided that list?
I provided both of them lists, both teams' list.
Did you designate yourself to a particular area, or were you kind of monitoring what was happening?
Because I was a supervisor, it was my crime scene or my case, I moved around throughout the day.
Roughly how long after the search started did Detective Mitchell contact you about the basement?
Probably 20 minutes or so. He contacted me and said, hey, I found a couple of firearms down here. Would you come down here and take a look?
And did you go to the basement?
I did.
Detective, I'm showing you what's up and marked for identification purposes.
8:35 a.m.
7.
Eastern Standard
Do
Time.
you recognize that diagram?
This is a diagram I asked Detective Hansen to make of the basement of the 3001 Old Tay Bridge, Jamey Noel's residence.
And does it give obviously not to scale, but does it give an accurate depiction of the layout of the basement?
It does. It's not to scale, but it does. To me, that having been through that basement, it does lay out it is an accurate description of the basement.
Your Honor,
Objection, Your Honor.
Statement it states Exhibit 7.
I think I heard Mr. Boyle say no objection. No objection, Your Honor.
States Exhibit 7 admitted for monitoring purposes.
Now, if you could, without the aid of States Exhibit 7, walk the judge to the location of the firearms that Detective Mitchell pointed out to you.
As you walk down the stairs to the basement, the first room you enter will be a finished open room. There's a bar off to one side. And there's a living room with furniture and everything, and then there's ultimately an exit door and a patio out to go ultimately to the pool of the residence. And then if you continue to walk straight, and that's what I did, knowing I'd been down there just a moment before with Mr. Noel, if you walk straight, you go into your right is a movie room, and off to your left, there's like a little sitting area table with a lot of items on top of the table off to your left-hand side. And then there's like a curtain where there's some HVAC system, and I believe a sump pump and things like that. There's one of those blinds set up there.
Were there any bedrooms located in the basement?
There was, but before, when you enter that main living room, as soon as you go down the stairs off to the left, there's a bedroom, and I believe that was Casey's bedroom, is where that was, off to the left.
And from the base of the steps in the basement, approximately how far was the table, chairs, and firearms ultimately located?
So the room is probably 15 foot wide, maybe a little bit wider, so 15 feet from the base of the stairs, then into that room where the table is, so then another 5 or 6 feet. And once you enter into that room, off to the left is the table.
Once Detective Mitchell got in there, did you observe the firearms in the boxes they were contained in. I believe State's Exhibits 5 and 6, the Smith & Wessons.
I did. He showed me and said, "Hey, I pulled this out, meaning the chair out. I saw this white box, and on the top of that box, you can clearly see a Smith & Wesson box, which I recognized as being a firearm box."
I'm showing you 4 pages titled State's Exhibits 8 and 9. You stated that you were present for the initial hearing of the defendant on November 9th.
Yes.
And the State's Exhibits 8 and 9, what are they?
So State's Exhibit 8 is an order directing the transport and retention of certain firearms of the defendant. State's Exhibit 9 is order on initial hearing. And that's it.
The firearms that were collected on March 13th, roughly a month ago, were those shotguns?
No, we collected 2 pistols, 2 semi-automatic 9mm Smith & Wesson pistols.
Did you collect those based on these orders and the verbal order from the judge on November 9th, 2023?
Yes. So I was present in the court when that order was issued by the judge. As during the search for our items of clothing receipts, we found those 2 firearms. I immediately thought that would be contraband, so I asked for further instructions from you. But it was all my intentions, because of hearing the judge's order, I was going to seize those items, and I did ultimately direct that those be seized.
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I believe probably the court could probably take judicial notice, but the state would move to admit State's Exhibits 8 and 9, the court's orders in the felony cause.
State's Exhibits 8 and 9 admitted.
Did you also note a shotgun located in the basement?
I did.
Is that something that you collected?
I did not collect, and I did not have it ordered be collected. I was present for the judge's order that Mr. Noel retained 1 shotgun. Before we left, I made sure we did not find any other firearms, and therefore that was the shotgun that I believed he was legally entitled to own or by the court, so I left that.
Can you describe the shotgun to the court?
I believe it was a pump shotgun, still had a tag on it. It was not loaded, and it was sitting, it was in a box, and you could see the barrel sticking out, and I believe you had a picture of it earlier.
So the exhibit was admitted through Detective Mitchell. You would agree that that appears to be true and accurate of how you saw it that day also?
Yes.
The 2 Smith & Wesson in the boxes, do you know if they were loaded at the time?
They were not loaded.
Did you physically take them out of the boxes, examine them at all, and look at them?
So Sergeant Toomey initially took them out. I did pick them up while he had them out after he was done taking photographs, and I got the serial numbers off them, and then ultimately called who I believe to be the seller of that firearm in order to verify that those were owned by Mr. Noel.
The defendant admitted an exhibit or receipt for those 2 weapons, and you were in the courtroom here just a little while ago when that happened.
Yes.
Was that your findings as well? They were purchased from, I believe, Midwest Guns?
Midwest Exchange, yes, and I got all the paperwork associated with that, including the 4473s, which is a federal document which the purchaser has to fill out, including their name and a list of questionnaires, and it included the serial numbers that were mentioned today. It included those 2 firearms.
Was there any ammunition found at the home?
There was.
Was that ammunition seized as well?
It was not seized. To my knowledge, the judge didn't say anything about not having possession of ammunition, so I did not seize that. It was 9mm ammunition. It's still in the box.
How long have you been with the state police?
35 years.
And can Can you just tell us the different roles you had with the state police or ranks?
So I started out in November of 1988. Goodness, sorry. I started out in November 1988. I was a road trooper until out of the Indianapolis Post, then ultimately out of the Putnamville Post until October of 95. Then I became a detective, a district detective, worked Putnamville District, 3 counties. And then from there, 2000, I got promoted to investigative squad sergeant in the Indianapolis Post until 2005. Then I got promoted to district investigative commander of the Putnamville Post until 2016. And then I've held the current position, which is area investigative commander, from 2016 until now. And so 29 years of being a detective, and then 7 years as being a road trooper.
How many people did you say report to you?
I believe it's 25, I think. I'd have to add up. 25 plus 3 civilians.
As a supervisor and 30 plus years on the state police, have you ever been asked to enforce court orders?
Yes.
You ever disregard court orders?
Not intentionally, no.
What if your employees disregard court orders?
They are instructed that's part of their duties, and if we, depending on the situation, they ultimately would get written up, and then we possibly look into the situation and could face disciplinary action depending on the degree of what they did or didn't do.
Is a subpoena to come to court a court order?
Yes.
If somebody would disregard a subpoena, would that be important?
Yes. They can get in trouble.
Disciplinary possibility?
Possibly.
You worked the road for a period of time.
I did. Occasionally still put on the uniform.
Ever stop anybody for a traffic violation?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
Judge, I'm going to object to relevancy now. That doesn't do much to do with the march. Mr. Irwin.
Your Honor, the relevancy is the issue of the defendant being a law enforcement officer for nearly 30 years.
Are you sick of having issues with your webinars, wasting tons of time on troubleshooting with attendees? If so, you need StreamYard On Air. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard.
Working the road, stopping people, and I'm sure at times there were people who denied ownership of contraband, who said it wasn't mine, who point to somebody else in the home, or I didn't know it was there. And I'm merely trying to elicit that from this witness.
Judge, those aren't relevant because we don't know any of the facts of those cases. It's speculation, clearly. Well, many of the years he was supervisor, he wasn't on the road. He's only been on the road 7 years. But as it contains this issue for this court, he has no evidence that he could indicate to the court. It's all speculation of what he may have done or what somebody may have done in the past.
Mr. Erdahl, I'll sustain that objection, but I get the point.
All right, thank you, Judge.
Judge Matlock's a good judge in my book.
Did you examine the other items on that table, Detective?
Some of them.
Did they appear to be men's, women's, or could you even tell?
A lot of them were men's, and a lot of them were items that were listed on the documents that I provided.
Was there Tom James apparel, shoes, clothes, etc., located in that general area by that table?
So there were items. So when you say Tom James, so on that list there was like different brands of shoes that weren't specifically Tom James, but they were sold by Tom James, and there was belts, $700-800 belts, or $800-900 shoes that were listed on that itemized list that were sold by Tom James. I don't recall there being a suit that was specifically a Tom James brand suit on that table around that, but again, those other items were around there.
Judge, I don't believe I have any other questions for this witness.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please report. Lieutenant, let's go back a little ways in time. August 16th of 2023. Did you have an occasion to be involved in the search of Mr. Noel's home on that date?
I was the author of the search warrant and was directing that. Bill Dalton was ultimately in charge of that, and I never went to Mr. Noel's house
You never went there that day.
that day.
But you were in charge of either getting the search warrant or putting items that you thought would be appropriate in that search warrant to be asked to be seized. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Was one of those items weapons?
No.
You didn't ask for any weapons at that time, did you? You asked for books and records, is that correct?
Correct.
How many people went on that search?
On August the 16th,
Yes, sir.
approximately 40 in different locations. We had 4 different locations. Mr. Noel's,
Let's talk just about the house.
I would have to go back and look at my notes, but I believe I sent 4 or 5 in each team.
Okay. And when you send a team to a particular location, because now you've got 4 locations, 40 people, do you suggest to the team what they're supposed to look for and where they're supposed to look for it?
I give them a copy of the search warrant. I had a briefing that morning, explained to them what the search warrant entailed at each location, made sure there was an OIC officer in charge of each scene, and explained the process of processing the different house, the whole barn, whatever, the fire stations, and what items were allowed to be seized and what I was looking for.
Were you looking for boxes that had receipts?
We were looking for anything that had bank records. I mean, if a box had a receipt in it or a
You'd
bank
look in
in
it, wouldn't it?
of course.
Yeah, that'd be an item that you would want to look at, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And on August 13th, you took pictures of areas in the house, or somebody within this team of 40 people took some pictures, or the evidence technician at some point took pictures.
Not on August 13th. On August 16th we did. You got the date wrong, Mr. Wells.
Yeah. Did you take pictures?
They did.
Okay. Who suggested that?
It wasn't a suggestion. It was I was telling them to do it, and they did it.
Okay. And you asked them to be thorough in their process, didn't you, about taking pictures and getting those receipts and things that the warrant requested?
Yes.
Okay.
Watch till the end, people. You'll like it.
May I approach you on? Lieutenant, ask you to take a look at this photograph, which has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 3. Ask you, can you identify that?
That is a picture of the basement of Jamey Noel's residence, 3001 Old Tate Bridge. That's a picture of the basement as you come down the stairs and look to the left of the table that I've been explaining.
Is that the picture that you sent to Mr. Stewart on April the 8th?
It's one of the pictures, yes.
And so that's a picture you're familiar with, and you, I think we requested it and you sent it over.
I did. Yes.
Could you look at that picture and indicate, is there a white box located in that picture?
Yes, it's on top of the chair that's pushed in under the table.
Okay, and that's the white box that we talked about, that was the white box where the weapons were found in March. Is that correct?
That appears to be correct, yes.
Okay, so on August the 16th, with all these people, some of which were directed to go to the home of Mr. Noel and search for documents, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated to me earlier that boxes were important, that they may contain receipts and all kinds of things that you thought, or the people doing the search would be interested in to comply with the search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that white box was there on August, when that search was conducted,
On
correct?
August the 16th, based on the picture, I wasn't again at the scene, but
Sure.
based on the picture and what I've been told.
Did anybody ever
It was
tell you
there.
they went through the box on August 16th to look for receipts? And oh my gosh, we found Smith & Wesson weapons.
I had a discussion with both First Sergeant Mitchell.
Just answer my question.
Well, I'm trying to.
Did anybody ever tell you that they went through that box on August 16th to look for receipts?
The answer would be, they told me they went through multiple boxes, multiple
Okay.
rooms, and they found multiple weapons.
Sure. And so multiple boxes would be really all the boxes that would be important that are hiding receipts in that very crowded room, correct?
Could be, sure.
Okay. But you're not there, so you're trusting them to do a complete search.
Right.
Okay. And were weapons located in the house that day?
I was told yes.
Okay, and where were they?
Throughout the house.
Okay, and were they picked up?
No, it was not subject to my search warrant.
Okay, so the weapons were left in the house.
Correct.
Okay. But all the receipts that you believed were in the house that were important were taken on that search.
Unless we missed some, yes.
Sure. Well, you would assume, would you not, that that box, that white box sitting on the chair, which was there in August, would have been looked through by somebody in order to look for receipts. It's a box, it's open, it's along with other boxes, and we're looking for receipts, so you never know where receipts go. You would have looked through that. Wouldn't the team have looked through that?
I would assume so.
Okay. Did anybody ever tell you on August the 17th, the next day, oh, by the way, we found 2 Smith & Wesson's weapons in that box?
No, but the box didn't come up.
Okay.
And again, they told me that there was multiple firearms throughout the house. They told me a number of different things. They described the inside of the residence because I wasn't there.
Well, if they had found a weapon, the rest of the house, they would have said something to you. Oh, by the way, when we're looking through receipts, we found 2 Smith & Wesson boxes in the basement in a white box on a table with all kinds of other stuff.
No, they would not have.
Okay. They wouldn't have told you that.
No, they wouldn't have.
Yeah.
It was immaterial.
It's just a Smith & Wesson box, and we're only looking for receipts, so we're not going to mention it to the lieutenant.
Correct.
But you did find weapons.
Well, again, they mentioned it to me. They said, hey, there's a bunch of firearms in the house. Throughout the house, there were firearms.
Okay. So you said leave them there. No problem. We're
Correct.
not looking for guns. We're looking for receipts.
Right.
Okay. So, you were asked on direct that those weapons were purchased in 2017, correct?
I don't believe you asked me when the exact purchase was, but they were
October of
the
2017.
firearms were purchased according to the receipt I received from Mr. Morrison at Midwest Gun Express Exchange. Said that they were purchased on October 28, 2017.
In what city?
So Mishawaka, Indiana. However, I believe, and I haven't verified that yet, some of the firearms, especially the ones he bought with the American Express Utica card, were shipped to Keesler's Police Supply. Even though they were purchased via the phone and paid for, they were then shipped to Keesler's Police Supply, and then they were ultimately, paperwork was done there, and they were receipted over to Mr. Noel.
But the 2 we're interested in were identified by First Sergeant Mitchell as being purchased on the 17th, 2017, correct?
Those were purchased on 2017, but actually where they were obtained from, I'm not sure. They could have been obtained actually from Keesler's Police Supply here in Jeffersonville, Indiana. I know they were bought up in Mishawaka.
And you know that they were still, according to Lieutenant Mitchell, in their original supply packages.
It appeared to be, yes.
Okay. You believe that to be true, and so does Lieutenant Mitchell, or Sergeant Mitchell. I didn't mean to promote him. That's Carter's problem. Is that correct?
That he was promoted, or what was the question?
The question was that First Sergeant Mitchell testified to the court that it is his opinion from his firearms experience or background as a documenter of material for the state police that those appeared to be in their original packaging.
They did, yes.
That's the picture.
Is this spinning, baby? It's the same.
Your Honor, just for the record, I wanted to be clear that this is a picture taken from the August
Correct,
search.
correct.
Yes, okay.
Yes, sir.
And not from the march.
Correct.
Okay,
I have no objection to that, Judge.
all right. Show me.
Well, he looked like a mean lieutenant.
Lieutenant, I'm going to have you look at the screen. That is a picture that has been introduced by the state. Is that white box that was picture taken in March of 2024 appear to be the same white box that was in your picture in August of 2023?
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you, sir.
Redirect.
No other questions, Your Honor.
Officer Herron, you gotta remember, I'm from Washington County.
Yes, sir.
What in the hell does an $800 belt look like?
I was a little surprised at that myself. He had a number of those. It looked pretty normal to the same kind of belt that I wear, which is about $30, but it didn't look a whole lot different.
And Mr. Boyle suggested that the shotgun in the basement would be an appropriate place if someone lived there. Did it appear as if Mr. Noel was living in the basement?
No, it appeared he lived upstairs in the bedroom because that's where his personal effects were, his clothing was, his coat that he retrieved from in there. It looked like he was living upstairs in the master bedroom.
That prompts questions from anyone.
Not from the state, Your Honor.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Question. The shotgun still had a tag on it as brand new, didn't it?
It did, yes.
When was it purchased?
I don't know the answer to that.
Where did it purchase from?
I would have to look at my records and see.
Okay. Nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Hurdle?
Your Honor, state doesn't have any more witnesses.
No.
Oh,
Do you have any
I'm
other questions?
sorry. I have no other questions.
You didn't happen to ask him where the shotgun was that I allowed him to keep for personal protection, did you?
I did not ask him that, no.
That prompts any further questions.
No, Your Honor.
Officer Herron, you may step down.
Thank you, Judge.
Any other witnesses, Mr. Hurdle?
No, Your Honor.
Wait just a moment.
Break just a moment.
Just a moment before we go forward.
How do you define a moment, Mr. Moe?
Judge, I'm a lawyer, you know that.
I know. So go
Much-
back,
much
go
as the
to
moment
the back,
you
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we can just have a moment to chat before we follow with it.
All right. Thank you, Officer.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Wilder?
Yes.
All right. Back on the record. Call your first witness, Mr. Wilder.
Your Honor, we call Bradley Creek.
Mr. Kramer, you were sworn earlier, correct?
Pardon?
You were sworn earlier?
No, sir.
You were not? Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury testimony you're about to give, believe the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Answer counsel's questions, and the court may have some questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kramer.
Good afternoon.
So you're here, you understand why you're here to ask some questions, or answer some questions regarding some events that took place back in November 9th of 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
So prior to that date,
Could we have him identify himself for the record?
well, I thought everybody did, Brad. Could you state your full name for the record?
Bradley Kramer.
And, Judge, I'm not asking any other
That's fine.
information.
That's fine.
So Bradley, you're here as a result of some things that took place on November 9th of 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was a day that Mr. Noel was arraigned. His initial hearing occurred in this courtroom, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were here.
Yes, sir.
And as a result of your being here, you were asked to go to the home that he lives in with his wife on Old Tate Bridge Road, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were asked to go there to retrieve the firearms that were in the home, right?
Yes, sir.
And why did you need to go retrieve the firearms?
At that point in time, I believe it was the court's order that all of his firearms needed to be removed from his home, aside from one shotgun, I believe. And I went to the house to retrieve those items.
In fact, the one shotgun that you were aware that Mr. Noel was allowed to keep, you saw that in the basement.
Objection. Fact not known.
Did you see the shotgun in the basement?
I saw a shotgun in the basement, yes.
Yeah, okay. And that was on November 9th?
Yes.
Okay. And you left it
Yes.
because you understood the judge allowed the shotgun to be left?
Yes.
And when you say you saw it in the basement, we've heard a lot of testimony. There's an area in the basement that's kind of unfinished, right?
No, it was not in that room, no, sir.
Okay, where was it?
It was in the finished portion of the basement.
Where the table,
Near the table, yes.
near the table where all the boxes are.
Yes, sir.
If I could, Ms. Fleeman, could you put the,
I don't see it. I've never seen that before. So.
I'm just trying to figure out how we end up with this show, but we need to. Okay. So this has been put in. This is a photograph that's been put into evidence, Mr. Kramer. Can you tell us? Are you familiar with, or is that something you recognize?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us what it is that you recall that to be.
It is a table with stuff on it.
Where at?
In the basement
Of.
Jamey Noel's house.
Okay. And this is this the area where you saw the shotgun that you left?
Yeah, I believe so. It was in that general vicinity, yes.
Okay. And so your purpose was to go to gather up the firearms,
Yes.
and you went with somebody, right?
Yes, sir.
It was Mr. Moon,
Yes, sir.
somebody you didn't know,
No, sir.
and you and Mr. Moon went in the house,
Yes, sir.
and you were going through the home to get the guns.
Mm-hmm.
And while you were doing that, Mr. Noel, Jamie called you on the phone as well,
Yes, sir.
telling you where guns were located.
Yes, sir.
When you went down there in that area, were there guns other than that shotgun that was left down in that general area?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the judge about what guns were just there?
I don't recall exactly how many, the quantity. I didn't keep an inventory of where I found what guns, but there were several boxes of unopened, I don't know, I guess rifles. I don't know if they were rifles or shotgun, but longer guns. And I don't specifically remember if there were handguns near or around that area, because there was quite a bit of guns that were retrieved that day.
And when there was a box with a gun in it, shotgun, you said you saw some boxes with shotgun.
There was unopened boxes with long guns in them. I don't know if they were shotguns or rifles.
Did you open the boxes?
No, he just took the boxes.
Took the boxes.
Yes, sir.
And then Detective Harrod previously testified there were about 82 guns that were brought to the state police post.
Okay.
And you and Mr. Moon brought those guns to the state police post, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a recollection of when you were there retrieving those guns, if you saw this white box?
No, sir, I don't.
I understand.
Scott County EMS, Congress responders, United First Responders, Code 3, the 1552 North Boatman Road, 155 Boatman Road.
Mr. Kramer, when you were asked to assist in collecting all of the guns in the house, you knew that was a pretty important request. Why was it important, in your opinion?
Because the court ordered it.
And when you were there trying to get all the guns that were in Mr. Noel's house, you looked for them and tried to find them?
No, sir, I didn't search for anything, if that's the correct verbiage. I was directed towards areas where guns may be.
Okay. And when you say you didn't search in the professional sense of search?
Yes, sir. It's not something, if in a professional capacity, being a law enforcement officer in the past, like it's not like how I would necessarily, I wouldn't consider what I did a search.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kramer.
Mr. Hurdle, cross-examination?
Who directed you, Mr. Kramer, to the locations of the guns?
Jamey did.
And that was via telephone,
Yeah.
FaceTime, Zoom, what was it?
Just telephone, yes, sir.
Okay, so if he told you to look in a closet, you looked in a closet. If he told you to look in a drawer, you looked in a drawer. If he told you to look in the bedroom, you looked in the bedroom.
Yes, sir.
This guy got his own lawyer because he know his butt's in trouble.
Mr. Wild, redirect?
And when you were being directed to where the guns were, Mr. Noel told you that there were guns up in the bedroom, right?
Yes, sir.
You went up to the bedroom and there they were.
Yes.
And you got those.
Yes.
And he directed you that there were guns in that area as well, right?
Yes, sir.
And you went there and you found guns there.
Yes, sir.
So where Mr. Noel directed you and told you there were guns there.
Yes, sir.
And you collected.
I collected the guns that I saw. Yes, sir.
And you felt like you got them all.
I felt like I got the guns where he directed me to find them.
And he directed you and told you that there were guns here.
Objection.
State your objection.
He didn't state that he was told to go there by Mr. Noel. I think there's a mischaracterization of the testimony. If you could rephrase the question.
Thank you. So when Mr. Noel was talking to you about where the guns were, right?
Yes, sir.
Did he tell you there were guns down in that part of the basement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Mr. Noel directed you to where the guns were, and you found guns in that area.
Yes, sir.
Hearsay.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Hurdle? Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Is he excused?
Your Honor, we have no questions.
Nothing for the state, Your Honor.
You're free to go.
Thanks, sir.
If you leave the courtroom, I will direct you not to discuss your testimony with anybody, nor allow them to discuss their testimony with you or anything else about this matter until this matter is completed.
I would very much like that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Lott.
I bet he used to be a deputy sheriff
All right, next
under
witness.
Jamey Noel. You can tell by Jamey Noel's face he ain't happy. He's hung.
Your Honor, we don't have any further witnesses. Yes, sir.
No further witnesses?
None, Judge.
Uh-oh.
State.
Get ready for it,
Rebuttal.
people.
Would you like to make argument? How could I imagine you
Him or
would?
me?
You can go first. I'll let you start the proceeding.
Your Honor, the state's exhibits that were put into evidence.
This guy right there, he's a special prosecutor. I believe he's from Washington County. Same as the judge, a special judge. But keep watching this until the end, people. You gonna love it.
Off of his property except one shotgun. The court was abundantly clear. It was a court order. It was recited in a number of documents. Order on initial hearing, and then an order directing the transport and retention of certain firearms. Designee, surrender all firearms. He was the one subject to the court order. Not Kramer, not Moon, not anybody else. Him. The initial hearing was in November. The search warrant for Tom James was March 13th. 125 days, and the evidence today was that he was living there. So for 125 days, he's in and out of that house. And so when he's in and out of that house, not once did he look around and say, I wonder if Brad Kramer got all the guns. I wonder if Charlie Moon got all the guns. For 125 days, he could have picked up the phone, called his lawyer, picked up the phone, called community corrections,
Hey, people, when you just getting out of the jail, would you go around and look and see if they missed anything? What does that tell you about the ex-sheriff, Jamey Noel?
Called the court and said, hey, I've got 2 guns here. They missed them. I don't want to get in trouble. This guy is a law enforcement officer for 20-some years with the state police, 2 terms as the sheriff. He knows what a court order is, and the responsibility is on him and no one else. The evidence was rather clear. The shotgun was right by these weapons.
Oh, my butt's
His
getting
clothing
sore.
was there. He directed him to there. He directed him to the bedroom where the Tom James clothing was. Did he forget? It doesn't matter if this gun was brand new, 5 years old, an antique gun. The court did not specify in its order that the gun had to be in good operating order. The gun had to be loaded. The gun had to be unloaded. The gun had to be in his bedroom. The gun had to be in his dresser drawer by his bed. None of those things happened. It was his responsibility, and the court, again, made it clear that that's what he was responsible for and no one else. The defense wants to talk about the issue of, didn't they look at these boxes back in August? Didn't they see these Smith & Wesson boxes? And it really doesn't matter. These firearms were not subject to a search warrant. And maybe they did open up the boxes and they see 2 firearms in it. The detective's going to say, put them back. Who cares? It doesn't matter because they were not subject. He was in lawful possession of those firearms at that time. Not until the court issued its order in November did it become a violation of the court order and subject to contempt.
There's his wife, his daughter. I don't know who this one is, but there's his wife and the daughter's behind there.
The court filed this sua sponte. The court filed a rule to show cause based on a warrant return by Detective Herring. He's been entitled to due process. That's what this
The
hearing
people
is for.
who watch
He's had
this
due process.
video,
He's
please
had a
subscribe
chance
to my
say,
channel.
This is why I shouldn't be held in contempt. That's not happening. Willful, intentional disobedience of a court order. That's what's happened here. Not an oversight, not an overlooking. Maybe there was an oversight on Brad Kramer. So what? It doesn't matter. The responsibility bears on him and him alone, and the accountability bears on him and him alone. So I'd ask the court to find him in indirect contempt for the violation of the court's order. That the burden has been met, and the state would ask the court to choose how best to deal with the violation and the contempt.
Thank you, Mr. Hurdle.
Please,
Lord,
Lord,
are
thank
you
you,
from
Lord.
the team that's going to argue?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Thank you. Judge, I think Mr. Hurdle says it doesn't matter, but it does matter. Willful intent to violate a court order is exactly what it means. A willful activity on his part to violate the court order. As I recall that when Mr. Noel was incarcerated, and before the court permitted him to be out on bond, he would have had to assure this court that all weapons were out of the house except for a shotgun. So he wasn't free to go to his house and go through all of those weapons. And so he did what, under those circumstances, would be a reasonable, ask people who, one of whom was in law enforcement, one of whom was a gentleman that Mr. Moon, who Mr. Kramer did not know, but they volunteered to go out and assist Mr. Noel in his responsibilities to this court in getting all those weapons. And they did that. And all those weapons were turned over to the state police. Now we know that in August, the state police had the photograph of the exact box in question in this case. And Mr. Hurdle may be right. that they went through and they noticed, but nobody at least made note because the weapons apparently weren't of any interest to anybody until after Mr. Noel was being arrested and required to turn them into the court. But if the state police knew that those weapons were in the house, they could have said, wait a minute, I think that theirs were missed because we're counting all the weapons, and those Smith & Wessons were in that box downstairs when we're looking for documents, weren't there. Do people make mistakes? Of course they do. But we know that those guns have been purchased since 2017 and they're in the same box, haven't been disturbed, haven't been out, haven't been touched, or at least no indication that they have by the state police themselves. We know that the court permitted him to have a shotgun, brand new, sitting in the basement. This does not rise itself, in my mind, to a fact that this is a willful contempt of this court order. I think that it was an inadvertent. Would I have done it differently? Maybe
Just
very
keep
well
watching.
I may have had someone else that I thought would be better, an independent person, to go to the house to make those choices about what was there and what wasn't there. Obviously, it's a room that doesn't get much attention because everything in the room was packed as if nobody has been in that room for quite some time. So I think that the argument that we're making would be that this is not a willful attempt of Mr. Noel to violate this court order. Was it inadvertent? Yes. Did he apologize for having those weapons there when he thought all of the weapons in the house had been accounted for except the one that this court permitted him to have? I don't believe, Your Honor, this has risen to a level of a contempt of this court order.
Yes, it is.
We would respectfully ask the court to not find so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Anything else from the state?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Uh-oh, get ready, people. Watch this.
Determination whether the alleged contemptuous act was committed with the intent to show disrespect or defiance is a factual matter to be determined by the court. Our Supreme Court has held that the respondent, Mr. Noel, has the burden of establishing that his failure to obey the order was not willful. I told Mr. Noel, don't do anything stupid. Do not try to deceive me, defy me. You will not like the consequences. Today is that day.
I told you.
You are not the law. You don't interpret the law. You don't enforce the law. You're not above the law. I find that you are in contempt of this court. Take him into custody.
Uh-oh.
No, that's enough. I'll find you guys in contempt for disrupting the proceedings, and you'll be there right there with him. Now, what is an appropriate sanction?
Watch this,
The
people.
question is, I can sentence him up to 180 days without a trial. Or I can sentence him to a day. Or I can release him. You know what I think the answer is? 60 days in. That's what I think the answer is today. Now, Mr. Wilder.
Yes, Your Honor.
Or Mr. Boyles. I apologize, Mr. Boyles, your lead. Before he is released, I'll take your suggestion. I want an independent individual to scour that household to determine that there's no further weapons. I find it Mr. Ertle's original argument that he's trying to make that I sustain, an officer of the law. Every time I go into court, I hear, I didn't know it was there. I didn't know it was there. It really didn't. You've heard that a million times. You've heard it a million times, and yet you still take them into custody, would be my guess. Every officer in the world has heard, I didn't know it was there, it's my friends. I'm not buying it. It was your burden. It's your responsibility. And today, the court will enforce that. Take him away.
Larry ain't happy.
Anything else,
Those
Mr. Hurdle? Mr. Boyles?
No, we'll be approached.
You may.
Okay, people, I got a question for you all. Can the judge order him, before he gets that 60 days up, to turn in them credit cards from the Utica Fire Department? That's my question. Jamey Noel should turn them credit cards over to the judge, part of him getting out of jail in 60 days. You saw a video earlier of him in Scott County Jail in his photo picture. And if you look at it, or you go to Washington County Sheriff's Department in Scott County, Indiana, bring up the bookend stuff, and you can look at it. That looks like a suicide outfit, is what it looks like. Yeah, it's only my opinion. They probably got him on suicide watch and got him in a suicide outfit. The way I've been told by people, they take your shoes. The only thing you got is your flip-floppers. No underwear. No t-shirt. Nothing like that where you wouldn't commit suicide in the jail. But, you know, you can look at the picture, go to Scott County, Indiana bookend log and see the picture of Mr. Noel, the ex-sheriff of Clark County. You know, you all view these videos, subscribe to them, thumbs up. I love you all. My butt's getting sore since I lost all that weight. So hit the subscribe bell, hit the thumbs up, and, you know, thank you all so much. I love you all. Good morning. Be safe out there. And DUI guy, Megan Fox, the umbrella guy, MG Law, you all need to do stuff like that. So God bless you all.